Hey, welcome back. We'll be going through the book of Proverbs. This is really this book about how to live out right knowledge in the world, and it's kind of fun because we're sort of wrapping it up. Not that we got to all the Proverbs, but we hit a lot of them, and so I thought it would be kind of fitting that we wrap up with the last proverb. And so specifically, we're looking today at what Proverbs says about women. And all the men went, great, because I don't know anything, and I've been married 30 years. No, it's funny because, if you've been in the Christian church for a while, in the evangelical church, this is like a passage that gets preached a lot on Mother's Day, like it doesn't fit any other time, but we're going to preach on Mother's Day. And honestly, I think a lot of women read this proverb, hear this proverb, and they kind of feel like they don't measure up. It can actually be sort of guilt-inducing, and that's not really what it's meant to do. But you'll see when you see the Proverbs 31 woman here, and so that's not its purpose. Spoiler alert. Because there's a lot of things this woman does in Proverbs. So people get the idea that it's like, oh, try harder, do more, never sleep. But that's not the purpose. But it really is a picture of what God has created you to be, and it's a picture of who a woman should be, and it's also really a picture of what wisdom, what the Proverbs, what this godly life looks like if it's lived out for all of us. And so with all that, jumping into Proverbs chapter 31, verse 10, and I'll be reading in the Hebrew today, so no, I'm kidding. Who can find a virtuous and capable wife? She is more precious than rubies. She's more precious. She's worth more than riches. And I think all the men would say amen. And hopefully you feel that way about your mate. Finding the right mate is a great thing in life. And Proverbs really speaks to that. Speaks to your mate selection, if you will, in that. And so, since my kids were very young, we've been really kind of drilling into them. I know, we were praying for their spouses since they've been born. We don't know if we've met them yet. We'll find out. But because who you marry really does affect a lot of things, and so we've been praying for that for our kids. And Proverbs speaks to that. Proverbs 18:22 says, "The man who finds a wife finds a treasure. He receives favor from the Lord." It's a good thing to find a good wife, but sometimes our choices have bad consequences too, right? And I was surprised no one posted this one when we asked for Proverbs, because it's one of those funny image proverbs that I thought surely somebody would give this when I was saying, what are your favorite proverbs or ones you want me to preach? It says, Proverbs 21:9, "It's better to live alone in the corner of an attic than with a quarrelsome wife in a lovely home." The NIV and some other translations, I think, translate it a little more, exactly, which, it's better to live on the corner of a roof. So, so don't picture nice Victorian attic with cool nooks and stuff, where you're living. But it would be better to live up on top of your roof. Now, in those days, you could go up on the roof and hang out and everything. The place is cool. But it'd be better to be up there than with a quarrelsome wife. And all the men said, no, I'm kidding. Don't say amen, or you will have to answer to it later. It's really this kind of tough picture, because when things are tough at home, right, if there's constant bickering, it's miserable. Now, if you're there, I just want to say right off, go to counseling. It's okay to seek some professional help and get some things done. But if you're choosing a mate now, you choose wisely. I had that shirt, I like, it's the rock, paper, scissors shirt. It says choose wisely. That fits in so many things. Did I wear that at the beginning of Proverbs? Because I should have. But it's, choose wisely. And our choices will affect things. And my advice always when choosing a spouse, for some of you it's too late, you've already chosen, but choose a friend. For those of you who are younger, choose someone you want to spend time with. A lot of guys don't want to spend time with their wives. I'm like, why? Choose someone you love and you want to hang out with. And, Denise and I often get criticized because we want to hang out with each other too much, which was the weirdest criticism I ever got from an employer in the church world. You like your wife too much. I'm sorry, it didn't matter. She's awesome. But marrying a friend helps. And your spouse can help you achieve what God wants for you, or they can tear you down and keep you from things. So Proverbs does talk a lot about that. There's a lot of wisdom. If you're younger, drop some, read some Proverbs, you drop some knowledge into your life there. Verse 11 says, talking about this wife, her husband can trust her, she will greatly enrich his life. Can trust her. Trust allows you to divide labor in marriage, right? It allows you not to worry about things that your partner is doing. Now, my wife does the books in our house. Now, for those of you who know, she's good at math. She's got a degree in it. So it kind of fits her skill set. So she likes to do the books. I don't care who does the books. There's not some people feel like the men have to do the books. If you're terrible with it, you might want to hand it over to the wife. Gender roles are not told to us in the Bible. He must do the books. But I like to do kind of physical things like change the oil. And so I trust that my wife is going to, do the books well. I trust that she's going to pay my taxes. Pastors have this weird tax status where I'm both self-employed and an employee, and it's complicated. I understand it. Some of you have been there. But I trust that she's going to pay my taxes. I don't have to go, oh my gosh, did she pay my taxes? Am I going to jail because she had me sign something? Is that how she's getting rid of me? No. My wife, and it doesn't have to be, because I know some women who change their oil too. I ran into a lady at Walmart who was about to change her own oil, and we were talking about oils and coupons and everything, and I was like, I could tell she was about to change her. And so, some women like to change oil, but me personally, it kind of fits my skill set, and, I don't mind getting greasy and dirty. And so my wife trusts that I'm using the right oil when I change it, right? There's trust that I'm doing what the cars need to get done. So they move. And so, if you trust your spouse, it greatly enriches your life. Verse 12, she brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. Good, not harm. In marriage, you have to think about what's good for the other person. Right? I'm getting a lot of nods on that one. There's a saying that like a comedian made popular, and it's kind of permeated pop culture, happy wife, happy life. I like that saying because I think a lot of times dudes are jerks, and sometimes we don't think about trying to make our wife happy. And so, it's kind of been a little correction. But I think probably a better saying would be happy spouse, happy house. Because it really takes both partners serving each other and doing things for each other to make marriage what it should be. Now, I often talk about I load the dishwasher for my wife, right? You guys, if you've heard me preach, I do it. I love to surprise her. Like if there's dishes in the sink, I get up in the morning, I clean everything, I put it in there, set it to. I hate to unload it though. I'll admit it. I will do your dishes all day long. I just hate putting them away. I don't know what it is about that. But anyway, I do that because I love my wife, serve my wife. But you know what? My wife will be out there stacking firewood with me too, right? Because we serve one another. And it gets her good and strong and buff. Who needs a gym? We got wood. And so, happy spouse, happy house. You serve one another. You do good, not harm. It's all the days of her life. Long-term love and care. Reality is sometimes marriages end. I don't want to condemn anyone there. It happens. But the goal is to last. And you shouldn't go into a marriage thinking, man, I hope this lasts a couple years. I read an article one time on starter marriages where people were going into marriage thinking, well, this one won't last, but it'll get me a few years, and we'll figure some things out and everything. Not a good idea if you're choosing a spouse. I'm just going to drop that to you now. And so you should go in thinking, hey, all of these, this is supposed to be this long-term commitment. Verse 13, she finds wool and flax and busily spins it. I need you guys to go out right now to a store and find some wool and flax. I'm not even sure what flax is. Does anyone know what flax is? I know you make baskets. They don't use flax for baskets, right? Anyone know what flax is? Anyway, I don't know either. But basically, she's concerned about household clothing and everything. It's so, verse 14, she is like a merchant ship bringing her food from afar. She gets up before dawn to prepare breakfast for her household and the plan of the day's work for her servant girls. She goes to inspect a field and buys it. With her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She's into like land development and everything. She's a realtor, apparently. She's energetic and strong, like she's going to the gym. A hard worker. She makes sure her dealings are profitable. Her lamp burns late into the night. Her hands are busy spinning thread. Her fingers twisting fiber. She's up before dawn. Lamp burns into the night. It's almost an impossible thing, right? Like she's up at 5, to bed at 2. And this is really, it's not the image of that you have to stay up all night. Not that she's an insomniac or there's no self-care involved. We use those words to describe the thing, we have to get enough sleep. That's something I've had to learn as I get older, because I tend to think I can do fine on 3 hours. If you get a good solid 3, you're good. Anyone? Like, a couple of us. Get a little older, you kind of start to realize maybe your body needs more than that. I'm just saying. Some of you need a good solid 12. That's awesome. But, it's insomnia. The point is industrious. You do what has to be done. And I think there's a period in life, in our culture, when you have kids and everything, you just, what was that meme? I sent it to my wife the other day, and I'd seen it posted before, but it was like, we keep saying, adulthood keeps saying, but after this, it's going to slow down a bit again and again until you die. Because life is busy, right? And honestly, there is, and we did a whole sermon about work, there's a lot of things that need to be done. And so we talked about with wisdom is putting, a work ethic into things, because honestly, there's a lot of things that have to get done in life. If we want to get ahead, if we want to make sure we're not hungry, there's these things we have to do. And it says bringing her food from afar, not door dashing from Pittsburgh. It's not Whole Foods on steroids. The point is, she makes sure the family's fed. These are adult responsibilities, right? Most kids don't think, is there going to be food today, right? Did you think that this morning? No, you didn't. I put her on the spot. You just assume that this magic cupboards, the food comes out and there's food. And so, she works. She works for the betterment of her family. Not all day on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, unless you're making money on it. If you're leveraging social media to make money, maybe it's her smartphone or laptop burns late into the night. I don't know. Whatever you got to do to make that money. It says, she extends a helping hand to the poor and opens her arms to the needy. And that's wisdom lived out, because we need to be kind and compassionate people. I like to read on Twitter a bit, and it was funny. It was like people were talking about what they were looking for in a spouse on Twitter, which kind of fit today's proverb, and I was reading some things. And it was really, one of the things they're like, is it too hard to ask for someone who's kind? Kindness is a huge thing. I have a Convoy of Hope shirt. We participated in Convoy of Hope a couple of years ago, and it says kindness matters. I like to wear that because I'm a big dude lifting heavy weights, and you don't expect kindness matters, when I'm at the gym. But it really does, right? Because kindness matters. In your house, kindness matters. And when you're looking for a spouse, you want someone who's kind. Who looks to other people with how can I help them, not how can I smack them in the face, right? And so, life is easier when you surround yourself with kind people. It's a fruit of the Spirit, right? Kindness, goodness, self-control, all these things. But we need to live out this thing. And so the ideal woman is really like the ideal person is we need to be kind. We need to be loving. She has no fear of winter for her household, for everyone has warm clothes. She makes her own bedspreads. She dresses in fine linen and purple gowns. She's prepared and gets everyone ready. That's part of wisdom for all of us. My wife, I love her in so many ways. You know that. She's awesome. She's a Proverbs 32 woman, because she's even better. Anyway. It's funny because she does little things that I notice that I think are hilarious and awesome. And like every winter, as winter approaches and it becomes winter coat season, she puts little packs of tissues in all my coats and puts gloves in there. Now, I never wear the gloves, and I forget the tissues are in there, and she has to remind me. But I love that, right? That's just, it's the little things you do. It's the kindness. I know she does it because she cares. And marriage is, again, serving one another in love. She knows I'm not going to remember that. I won't even remember that I have the gloves in there, let alone remember to put them in the coat, right? Anyone else? Men, it's like it doesn't matter how cold it is. I will go out without gloves till my hands split and crack and bleed, and I'm like, yes, men, amen. And it takes a whole gallon of lotion to get them back to life. Her husband is well known at the city gates where he sits with other civic leaders. She takes care of everything, even things that can be thought of as men's work. It's funny because I think sometimes we decide what's men's work and women's work, and it's different in every culture. Like we think that somehow, this is, how things should be. I saw this tweet today. It was the question, do you think a man should get up and put his dishes in the sink after eating if his wife's in the room? I'm thinking, he better do it whether she's in the room or not. And the inference was the woman ought to get it. No. I'm just going to say that outright. If that's your belief, we need to have a conversation. But because, guys get this idea that, women are there to serve us. And that's not at all. We're to serve one another. Now, I might get the dishes, for my wife. She might get them for me because she's going, but that's serving one another. We serve each other, but she's not my servant. Right? And it's an important thing. Sometimes there's pushback on gender roles in the Bible that I see debates and arguments online, and I'm like, that's not even in the Bible. That's just American culture. And if you travel, you see other cultures, people live a little differently. I don't know, maybe there's a culture where the men are expected to load the dishwasher. I don't know. When I was in Ethiopia, the women are carrying these big bundles of firewood. And I'm like, man, that would be like my job at home. And so different things, different world. 24, she makes belted linen garments and sashes to sell to the merchants. What do you picture here? Like, do you picture like a lady on Shark Tank, trying to pitch her idea? Or maybe like, do you picture Etsy store? or do you picture Amazon seller? I don't know. I don't know whichever yet. Either way, it's the fact is, industrious. And a lot of people, we have to have these side hustles, and we have to have hustles and little things going to make ends meet, right? I have friends who have 5 jobs. Unfortunately, they're not 5 full-time jobs. but you do. She does what she has to do. And again, that's not just a chick thing. That's a dude thing. Like sometimes you just got to do what you got to do in life to put food on the table. She's clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. When she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instructions with kindness. She carefully watches everything in her household and suffers nothing from laziness. Her children stand and bless her. Her husband praises her. There are many virtuous and capable women in the world, but you surpass them all. If there was Instagram, he'd post it, right? Like if there was Facebook, he'd brag. I get annoyed sometimes because people are like, my husband's the best husband in the world. And I'm like, no, he's not. I am. Ask my wife. She'll tell you. But the truth, it's that kind of thing where you're just, you get praise because, she's doing the right thing. Now we drop into verse 30 and 31. Now, tone changes up a little bit here, but you'll see. Charm is deceptive and beauty does not last. But a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised. Reward her for all she has done. Let her deeds publicly declare her praise. Charm is deceptive. Now, I grew up watching the A-Team, right? And if you knew the characters, there was one guy, his name was Face. And what was his job? To charm and deceive. You need a plane, he'll talk you out of it. If you needed, whenever they needed something, they kind of send him. And there's people who are charming in life, right? And maybe some of you dated them at one point. They're good at getting what they need, but not necessarily good at, being a godly person. So charm is deceptive. Someone who's smooth but not truthful. Charm and beauty. Charm is deceptive and beauty does not last. It doesn't mean that to be a faithful believer you have to be unpleasant and unattractive. that makes you godly. But we often put emphasis on how people look, right? Like when you look at a picture, what's the first thing you look at? Yourself, right? And what are you checking? See if you look good. Did it turn out okay? Did I get my good side? Did I do the scrunch and look right? I don't know. All these things we do, and we worry about, all these things, and it's natural. We do that, but sometimes we put too much emphasis on how we look. 1 Samuel 16. There's this story. We've talked about it before, but to tell the story again, it's Samuel goes to anoint a new king, and Jesse he goes to Jesse. He goes, "Hey, it's one of your sons. Bring him up." And so they line up the sons. They're going through him, and he looks at him and he's like, "Oh, dude, this guy looks like a king." You know what I mean? Someone just looks like he's the dude at the gym. He's jacked. He's tall. He's like everything kind of the epitome. If you like long curly hair, he's got long curly hair. If you like long straight hair, I don't know what it is, like Fabio or whatever from the 80s, whatever your thing is, this dude looks like a king. And Samuel's like, this dude looks like a king. And God's like, nope. and goes down the hall, you want? Nope. Till there's none left, and he's like, dude, you got any more sons? I'm like, there's this guy, David, my youngest. We didn't even invite him to the party. He's out watching the sheep. So go, and he's like, well, go get Stinky Boy. And so they get this stinky little kid, who's kind of the guy who doesn't look like a king at all, and God's like, hey, I chose him. And it says this, the Lord says to him, don't judge by his appearance or his height, for I've rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see him. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And so rejects the other sons, takes David. And honestly, dudes sometimes, and I'm sure ladies as well, we base our decision to be interested in somebody by they looking good, right? And that doesn't last. They have a body that won't quit, but it will. Beauty does not last. Our culture is big on beauty, right? Man, our culture does everything to stay fit and young. I do exercise, but it's not to look good. It's just because I want my body to keep working as long as I got it here. And so we do biking and things. But guys go to the gym. You can kind of criticize women for this. They just care about how they look. Dude at the gym are crazy, man. They all. This one dude I see him at the gym all the time. I'm like, do you ever lift, or you just look in the mirror the entire time you lift it? You know what I mean? Because dudes can be a little vain, and some of you are them. Some of you have been gym rats. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, come on. And we get plastic surgery. We get plastic surgery at the point you don't even look like a human anymore. You look like some sort of alien. You pulled and tucked and I'm not saying you can't get plastic surgery. There's cases, times, and everything. But you can't put your everything in it. Tons of creams and lotions and drugs. My gosh, my Facebook feed has gotten really weird lately. Anyone else? All kinds of things for this might be wrong with you. You're old, you need this cream. And it's, we can get obsessed with this, right? Again, it's not bad to use a lotion. It's not bad to use a cream. It's not bad to wear some makeup, but is your emphasis on just how you look? Are we worried so much about the package, we're not concerned about what's inside? In our culture, we're all on a race against time that we'll lose. It's okay to look good, to take care of yourself, wear makeup, but that can't be our emphasis. So most of you know, Denise and I went to high school together. Who can find a good wife? Look in middle school. That's where I found her. I had to tell my kids, it's not normal to find your wife in middle school. It's not usually till high school. No, it's usually beyond that for most of us in our culture. But it's funny because there was a comment a couple years ago. Denise and I were somewhere, and they're like, they joked. They said, "Oh, you're gonna put her back in her hyperbaric oxygen chamber till the next reunion," because these kind of and some of you, I'm not going to name you, but I'm going to point at you so everybody knows, thought that my wife was significantly younger than me. Because most of you are like, yeah, she's 10 years. No, we're the same age. Here's the thing. I believe my wife is beautiful. Okay, she is my standard of beauty. But the truth is, people joke, you look the same as you did in high school. No, we don't. Get some pictures out. We look a little older. We're a little longer in the tooth. And that's okay. Our bodies age. And eventually they die. I didn't know if you know this. Death rate hovers around 100%. If you're born, you will die. And it doesn't matter how much you race against time, eventually you grandma and grandpa. Or you die early. Your choice. It doesn't mean you can't be healthy, but we have to be concerned about what we should be concerned about. At funerals, I often read a line from an older translation that says, "What is sown is perishable, but what is reaped eternal," because it sounds nice and like funerally. But 1 Corinthians 15:42, which is where it comes from, says, "It is the same with the resurrection of the dead. Our earthly bodies are planted in the ground when we die, and they will be raised to live forever." This life is just a seed of what's going to grow in eternity. Our problem is sometimes we're so concerned about what the seed looks. We ought to be concerned about the eternity part of it. And when we choose a spouse, sometimes we choose someone because they look good. It's okay to be attracted to your spouse. I'm attracted to mine. But that can't be the emphasis, because that'll fade. Those of you who got married young and then got older, you see. It changes. Clothing size changes. Their energy levels change. I always joke, Denise would have to carry, I'm falling apart because I have high mileage on my body. Do a lot of stupid things all the time. I get hurt a lot. And, one time I got hurt in my balloon tying arm got hurt, and I tore my bicep off another time. And Denise is like, "Well, I guess I better go get that bucket," because I always said, you're going to have to carry me around in a bucket. I'm thinking now she's going to need a wheelbarrow because I'm getting bigger. But point is, our bodies don't last. Here's the thing. When you look back, anyone ever look back on your middle school pictures? I mean, for some of you, you're in middle school. For some of you, it's not that long ago, so it doesn't look that different. But those of us who are a little more advanced in years, anyone ever look back at middle school pictures? I got some funny ones, Bob. I'll show you later. No, but, do you remember parachute pants? Do you want to forget parachute pants? I remember I had gray ones, because nothing like nylon tight pants says, I can't, glad that guy's my pastor. But, or here, we're 80s people, this is going to date this, tall hair. I mean, 80s hair was crazy tall. Used an entire can of hairspray to get it. I literally saw some pictures, and girls' hair was like the size of their head. And I imagine in Jersey it was even worse for those of you from Jersey, because we called it Jersey hair. But there are holes in the ozone just because of certain people and the amount. It's hilarious, right? Because you look back on it, because you thought you looked so good. And the better you think you look now, the stupider you look in your pictures later. I guarantee you. And it's I love the era with the powder blue tuxes. Did you ever wear a powder blue tux, anyone? Those are awesome. But the better you look now, the kind of the funnier it is later, right? We laugh. When I see pictures of me in junior high, I'm like, oh my gosh, did I own a comb? I know I did, because I carried it in my back pocket. What was that about? Anyway, thought it was awesome. It was embarrassing now. And here's the thing. When we look back in eternity, I think we'll laugh at what we thought was important. Or cry. Because, many times we put our emphasis on the physical. But it's the internal. And that's what Proverbs is teaching us. It's not that they do all these things. It's that their character has been shaped and molded the way God would have them be molded. And so you live a different way. Proverbs 5:18 says, "Let your wife be a fountain of blessing for you. Rejoice in the wife of your youth." If you're following along in the Bible, read the next two verses. It's a little more explicit, but kids are with us today, so we're going to keep it PG. Men often trade in an older model for a younger one, right? That ain't right. Bible says some things about that specifically in a lot of places. Charm is deceptive and beauty does not last, but a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised. And we talked about, when we started this series, we talked about fear of the Lord. And, Proverbs 1:7. Fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Fools. I pick a fool. Because, I love Mr. T. I follow him on Twitter. And some of you didn't know he's on Twitter. Now you're going to go follow him on Twitter. I've told you that the 90s style motivational poster that I probably ought to buy it someday. It's just Mr. T, and he's like, they're fools. I pity them. Someone sent me this one. It's like Mr. Afternoon Tea, and he's like drinking tea, and he's got a monocle. Because there's something about a monocle that makes you look intelligent and sophisticated. I don't know. It's just broken glasses tied to a string, but it does, right? And some of you saw I think somebody posted it on my Facebook wall. It says, one sympathizes with the buffoon. Anyway, in the Bible, a fool is one who spurns wisdom in God's ways. It's so the fear of the Lord is foundation of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. And fear of the Lord. Now, when we think fear, most of us think trembling under a bed, right? When we hear the word fear. But hopefully, when you think of fear of God, it's not trembling under a bed, although that might happen if you're near a bed when, like whenever an angel shows up, like touched by an angel, they always show up, they're like, ah, in the Bible, it's like, ah! But, yesterday we were biking, and we stopped in kind of in the middle of the road. I don't know if you noticed this, but like, when I was like, hey, when we were stopping that weird place on Westville, and I was like, hey, let's get going. You know why I said that? Someone let their Rottweiler out the front door to go to the bathroom without anything attached to it. I love Rottweilers. I love pit bulls. I love a big-headed dog. You know what I'm saying? But I like little dogs too. I like big dogs, little dogs, all kinds of dogs. Love dogs. But I have fear and respect for the Rottweiler. And I was near his territory, and I don't know him. And so my fear was like, let us pedal on, my friends. And I didn't have to be fast. It's faster than Lewis. Sorry, brother. But, I think of God like a Rottweiler. There's awesome. Now, Rottweilers, they're friendly dogs, they're loving dogs, but there's a certain level of respect you have over the Rottweiler, right? You're not going to smack a Rottweiler in the face, right? You might lose your hand. And there's a respect that we need with God. God's all powerful. And so we have to fear him, and that means we have this awesome respect for him, and we live differently because of that. If we start on this path of wisdom, we understand how great God is. We submit our lives to him. And ultimately, God's word is the starting point for knowing and understanding his will. And for men or women, it's the place we should start. When you begin to order your life around the ways that God has you to be, it changes the way you live. Women, again, this might be, like leave you feeling like you don't measure up. If you read this, anyone ever, be honest, just give me a little head nod or something. You ever read Proverbs 31 and go, man, I can't do all that. One, it's developmental. You're not going to start off doing all that. You will get better. But and I doubt it's sort of an idealized thing. And I really think it's kind of funny because this whole book is this book about teaching young men how to live for the most part, and it wraps up by showing the idealized woman. I think it's really this is what wisdom looks like lived out. I mean, I think that a lot of women are that way, but I think it's really it's not to say give you a checklist of things you're doing wrong. Like, didn't get up early this morning. That's a wrong. I didn't stay up all night. Doing things. Forgot about the winter clothes for my kids. It's not this checklist of right and wrong, but it's this encouragement to live this way that's a godly way. And I think it should be encouraging because women are often underappreciated, undervalued, and marginalized in our culture, in all cultures. I'm a bit of a feminist in that. I'll talk to you about that. but it's really this. It really shows how women should be valued. And this poem, it's interesting though for those of you who like things like this. It's an acrostic poem at the end. It's 22 verses. It's because the Hebrew alphabet has 22 letters, and it wraps up this book. It shows what it's like to live this godly life. It's not necessarily an exact prescription for your life or your wife, but it really is a celebration of wise women who live rightly. And this isn't just for the ladies. I've heard so many dudes, and this is like the Christian dude thing, and they'll talk about this like, if you go to Bible college or seminary or something, like, I want to marry a Proverbs 31 woman. If you've ever been like a young adult group with dudes, like, I want to marry a Proverbs 31 woman. What do you say? You better become a Proverbs 31 man. Because we have to develop and become the same thing ourselves. And again, this is putting wisdom into action. It's all these things in the book of Proverbs and other places in the Bible that tell us how to order and live our lives. Ultimately, we all need to put this wisdom into action, to fear the Lord, to shape our lives around his ways, and live in a way that honors him in our lives. John 10:10, which I've quoted enough times, you should all be able to quote. Jesus said, I come that they may have life and have it to the full. A full life is following God's ways so we can truly live how we're called to live and ultimately find life in Jesus. And the book of Proverbs teaches us part of these ways of how to live a full life and the life that God has called us to live.